Listen to me, this will land hard. The moment a woman stops explaining herself, stops chasing validation, stops trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding her, everything begins to rearrange. Not because she forced it, not because she manipulated the outcome, but because silence is not weakness. It is self-trust in its rawest form. When you turn your focus inward, something radical happens. You stop bleeding energy into places that were never meant to hold you. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop shrinking your truth to keep other people comfortable. And suddenly, almost quietly, the chaos loses its grip on you. Here's the truth most people are afraid to say out loud. Not everyone deserves access to your thoughts. Your emotions, you're healing. When you choose yourself, when you choose stillness over noise, alignment over approval, your nervous system finally exhales. And from that calm clarity is born. Silence doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've grown up. It means you're no longer reacting from old wounds or inherited fear. You're responding from a grounded place that says, I know who I am, even if you don't. And watch this carefully. When you stop proving, life starts providing. When you stop begging for breadcrumbs, you recognize the table was always yours. Relationships shift, opportunities surface. Boundaries strengthen, not because the world changed, but because you did. This is where everything starts falling into place. Not loudly, not dramatically, but honestly. When you focus on yourself, truly focus, not the performative kind, not the kind that still checks who's watching, you begin to dismantle a lifelong habit of self-abandonment. That habit where you put everyone else's comfort ahead of your own truth, where you silence your instincts because you were taught they were too much. Where you learned that being chosen mattered more than choosing yourself. Staying silent during this shift is not passive, it is powerful restraint. It is you refusing to explain your boundaries to people who benefit from you having none. It is you stepping out of arguments that were never about understanding, only control. Silence, in this season, becomes a filter. Those who respect it rise closer. Those who relied on your reactions fall away. And here's the uncomfortable part. Your silence will trigger people. Not because you've done something wrong, but because you've stopped doing what kept them comfortable. You've stopped overgiving. You've stopped rescuing. You've stopped making yourself smaller so others could feel taller. When you stop responding, you start observing. Patterns reveal themselves. Intentions become obvious. You see who valued your energy and who only valued your availability. And that awareness, it is freedom. Focusing on yourself means you no longer chase closure from people who refuse accountability. You give it to yourself. You stop asking, why wasn't I enough? And start asking, why did I stay so long? This is where your power returns, not with noise, but with certainty. When a woman goes quiet and turns inward, it isn't because she has nothing to say. It's because she's finally listening to herself, to the voice she ignored for years because it was drowned out by expectations, guilt, and the fear of being alone. That inner voice doesn't scream, it whispers. And silence is the only way you ever hear it clearly. This is where emotional maturity is forged. You stop reacting on impulse. You stop defending your character to people committed to misreading you. You stop trying to be understood by those who never asked who you were becoming. Instead, you begin to respond from discernment, from wisdom, from a place that no longer needs permission. And something subtle but profound begins to happen. Your nervous system recalibrates. The constant anxiety of waiting for replies, reading between lines, bracing for disappointment, it fades. You realize peace is not boring. Peace is powerful. Peace is what allows you to make decisions without steering the wheel. Staying silent gives you time. Time to grieve what you outgrew. Time to detach from outcomes you cannot control. Time to reparent the parts of you that learned love through inconsistency. In that space, you no longer chase intensity and call it passion. You recognize safety as attraction. This is where self-trust is rebuilt brick by brick. You start believing yourself again. And once you trust yourself, you are no longer easily shaken because your foundation is internal not borrowed from someone else's approval. Silence also teaches you something most people never learn. Not every truth needs to be spoken to be honored. Some truths are meant to be lived. When you stop announcing your boundaries and start embodying them, the world adjusts or it exits. And either way, you win. When you focus on yourself, you begin to understand the difference between connection and attachment. Attachment is driven by fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of being replaced. Connection is rooted in choice. And choice only exists when you are not desperate to be chosen. Your silence becomes a mirror. People see themselves in it. Some will project. Some will panic. Some will try to provoke a reaction just to feel powerful again. And this is where discipline matters. Because every time you refuse to engage, you are choosing your future over familiar chaos. You start recognizing emotional labor for what it is. Not love, not loyalty, but exhaustion dressed up as virtue. You stop carrying conversations alone. You stop explaining the same pain in different words. You stop asking for effort from people who benefit from your patience. And in that quiet strength, your standards rise, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. You no longer negotiate the bare minimum. You no longer confuse endurance with devotion. You choose peace, even when it costs you people. When you focus on yourself and stay silent, you stop leaking power through emotional overexposure. You realize not everyone needs a front row seat to your healing. Some people only wanted access so they could feel relevant in your pain. Silence closes that door cleanly. Finally, this is where detachment begins to feel like relief instead of loss. You no longer feel responsible for other people's emotions. You stop managing reactions. You stop cushioning truths so they land gently for those who never handled you with care. You understand now empathy without boundaries is self-betrayal. Your energy becomes intentional, focused, protected. You invest it where there is reciprocity, not potential. And that alone changes everything. Because potential keeps you stuck in hope, reality sets you free. Staying silent teaches you discernment. You notice who reaches out to understand you and who reaches out to regain control. You feel the difference between curiosity and entitlement, between love and possession. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. This is also where self-respect becomes visible, not announced, felt. You walk differently. You respond less. You choose carefully. People sense it before you say a word. Some rise to meet it. Others fade away, quietly realizing you are no longer available for the version of you they benefited from. And that's the turning point. Because when you stop explaining yourself, life starts aligning with the woman you're becoming, not the one you were trying to survive as. At this stage, something undeniable settles in. You are no longer afraid of being misunderstood. That fear once kept you talking too much, giving too much, bending too far. But now you understand this truth. People don't misunderstand you by accident. They do it when the real version of you threatens the story they tell themselves. So you stop correcting narratives. You stop defending intentions. You let silence do what explanations never could, reveal character. Because the right people don't need convincing. They feel your integrity. They recognize your consistency. They don't ask you to perform clarity for them. Focusing on yourself also sharpens your intuition. You feel discomfort sooner. You trust it faster. You no longer override it with logic just to keep the peace. Peace that requires self-erasure is not peace, it's compliance. And you're done with that. You begin to understand that growth is quiet. Healing doesn't announce itself. Power doesn't posture, it stabilizes. You don't need to prove how strong you are because your life reflects it. Your choices reflect it. The calm in your voice reflects it. This is where emotional independence takes root. You enjoy connection, but you no longer depend on it to feel whole. You love deeply, but you don't lose yourself inside love. You stand beside people, not beneath them. And in that grounded independence, something rare happens. You stop waiting for permission to live the life that already feels true to you. Now you start to notice how differently you move through the world. There is less urgency, less explaining, less chasing. You are no longer driven by the need to be seen. You are anchored in the knowing that you are. And that knowing changes the way you show up everywhere. When you focus on yourself, your attention becomes sacred. You don't scatter it across people who are inconsistent, conversations that drain you, or situations that require you to betray your own values. You become selective, not because you're closed off, but because you're finally open to yourself. Silence becomes your sanctuary, not as an escape, but as a place of regulation. In that quiet, you process instead of react. You reflect instead of ruminate. You respond with intention instead of impulse. And that alone elevates every relationship you choose to keep. You also begin to release the illusion of control. You stop trying to manage outcomes, timelines, or other people's readiness. You understand that forcing alignment only creates resistance. Real alignment arrives when you are no longer chasing it. This is where acceptance deepens. You accept people as they are, not as who you hope they would become. And in that acceptance, you stop taking things personally. You realize their limitations were never a reflection of your worth. This is the season where patience stops feeling like waiting and starts feeling like trust. You are no longer rushing life to meet you where you stand. You're allowing it to unfold because you finally believe you can handle whatever arrives. That belief is power. When you stay silent now, it's not because you're holding back. It's because you've learned timing. You understand that not every moment requires your voice, your energy, your explanation. Some moments require your presence. Others require your absence. Wisdom is knowing the difference. You begin to see how much force you used to apply to things that were never meant to last. How much effort you poured into proving, fixing, holding together what was already slipping away, and instead of you feel gratitude for the release, for the lesson, for the clarity. Your standards are no longer reactive. They are rooted. You don't raise them to punish others. You raise them to protect your peace. You don't threaten distance. You embody it. And that embodiment speaks louder than any boundary you could ever announce. This is also where self-compassion deepens. You stop judging your past choices with harshness. You see the younger version of yourself clearly, doing the best she could with the awareness she had. And instead of shame, you feel respect, because it took courage to arrive here, to be honest, to choose alignment over attachment. And now, life isn't fighting you anymore. It's responding to you. Have you ever noticed how silence isn't emptiness? It's power waiting to be unleashed. When you stop reacting, stop trying to explain yourself, stop justifying your choices to anyone, the world begins to shift around you. It's as if the universe pauses, leans in, and listens. And here's the beautiful irony. While others are busy underestimating you, you are quietly evolving. Every action you take, every thought you nurture is building a stronger, wiser version of yourself. You don't have to announce your growth. It shows naturally in your poise, your confidence, your ability to remain unshaken. There's a certain magic in focusing on yourself when your energy is spent on personal growth, self-love, and your dreams, the chaos outside starts to fade. The relationships that are meant for you align effortlessly, while those that drain, you drift away. You start attracting respect without demanding it, admiration without performing for it, and love without clinging to it. People notice your calm, your grounded presence, and they instinctively gravitate toward it, even without words. Silence allows you to listen deeply to yourself and to the rhythms of life. It teaches patience, humility, and resilience. And the most powerful part, by staying silent and focused, you create space for clarity. Problems that once seemed overwhelming start dissolving. Opportunities appear where you least expect them. Everything truly falls into place, not because you forced it, but because you became a force the world cannot ignore. This is the ultimate truth. When you focus on yourself and embrace silence, life begins to bend in your favor in ways you never imagined. The noise of the world, the opinions, the judgments, the expectations loses its grip on you. You stop seeking validation from anyone because you've found it within. And that's where real power lies. There is no grand announcement, no dramatic display. Your transformation is quiet, subtle, yet unstoppable. Every step you take in self-awareness, every boundary you honor, every moment you dedicate to your growth compounds into a life that feels aligned, peaceful, and profoundly fulfilling. People will notice, not because you demanded attention, but because your energy is magnetic. Opportunities, relationships, and blessings start flowing naturally, effortlessly. You realize that the world doesn't need your explanations, your justifications, or your frantic attempts to be understood. It needs your presence. Steady, grounded, and unapologetically focused on your own evolution. That is the secret most overlook. The less you chase, the more falls into place. So let this be your reminder. Choose yourself, protect your energy, stay silent when it matters. Focus on your growth, your dreams, your inner fire. Because when you do, life doesn't just happen. You become the calm eye in the storm, the force that effortlessly shapes your own destiny. Everything falls into place, not by chance, but by the power of your unwavering focus and the quiet strength of your soul.